The budget, as Gilbert said of the House of Lords, did nothing in particular, but did it rather well. It steadied the ship, calmed the waves, and poured oil on troubled waters. But it didn't really deal with the fundamental problem that we face in our economy, and that is the state taxes and spends far too much. Both taxation and spending are too big a share of the national income. And this has got worse following the pandemic because there seems to be an assumption that every problem must be solved by the state, whether it's childcare or any issue that arises. It's expected that your big brother in the state can come in, hold you by the hand and do things for you. But I firmly believe, that money is better spent by you, the people who earned it, rather than the state. Why is that? Well, you have a greater concern as to whether it is spent well, whether you get a return on it if you're investing, whether it provides you with what you want in terms of services, whether it's done properly, whether there is efficiency when you're getting served. Whereas if you're spending other people's money, it's so much easier to be cavalier about it. And that's not that the bureaucratic beast of the civil service is incompetent, but it's just the incentives aren't right. They're not there to be either frugal or efficient. And the civil service itself, of course, has got very large. Boris Johnson, when he was leading the government, wanted to cut the civil service by £91,000. £91,000, no, much more than that, 91,000 individuals. But unfortunately, when the current Prime Minister took office, that plan went. And that's a real problem because cutting 91,000 civil servants doesn't only save their wages and the costs of employing them, but it also stops them thinking up lots of rules that may get in the way of your life and may cost more money as they put burdens onto the economy. You may be able to get efficient services delivered with fewer people, and that should be the aim, because yesterday the civil service, perhaps in not such a civil way, engaged in collective inaction. And I just wonder if anyone noticed. Probably not. People may have noticed the junior doctor's absence, or indeed the teacher's absence, and certainly people coming in here noticed the strikes on the railways and the underground, but not the civil servants. Now some of them weren't working from home. They actually came in to picket their offices, which is great. The only way to get people into the office is to get them to picket it, which has a certain illogicality about it. But that was what was happening yesterday. People came in, stood outside their offices, and marvellous to see them back. But that wasn't quite what I intended when I put notes on their desk saying I hope to see them back in due course. I thought they'd come into work rather than to picket. But there is a lot of fat within the system that we need to be getting rid of. In the UK, those working for the civil service have a much better payment base when it comes to pensions. 26 to 30% of their salary is added to their pension compared to 4% for those in the private sector. So you're talking about 6 or 7 times the private sector's pension accumulation, including on top of earnings that are slightly ahead of those in the private sector. So when you take into account the pension benefits, they're doing much better, and they work 5 hours fewer per week than the national average. So that's why we want to be cutting back on the civil service, cutting back on what they do, so that people can do more things for themselves, spending their own money, to go back to the fundamental point that we started with. We don't need as many people as we have got, and we don't need them to have these extraordinary feather-bedded terms in comparison. But there are more savings to be had than that. Anyone who interacts with the government knows that there is waste. We're still spending £11 billion on our foreign aid budget, even after it has been cut. Even Wes Streeting, the Shadow Health Secretary, has said that the NHS is in dire need of reform. And this is really important because the Labour analysis of the NHS for decades has been just give them more money, whereas Wes Streeting is saying, let's make sure the money is spent better. And that's fundamentally important. And we should obviously save the money by scrapping HS2, the costs of which go up and up and up. The years go by. It seems to be an endless delay when in the 19th century, we could build railways quite quickly. Now it takes decades and costs billions for a service that people aren't using anymore, not least perhaps because they keep on going on strike. Added to that is a welfare system that we revealed on this programme recently pays universal credit to people earning up to £125,000. And this was something that the coalition government tried to stop in 2010. How can it have crept back? Isn't that just a waste of your money? And that's one of the absolutely key points, that it is your money. There has been for too long the notion of the government's money, but there's no such thing. It is taxpayers' money. It is your money, and it is your money that you ought to keep because fundamentally you spend it better. And that's what we needed from the budget. We need a smaller state doing less better and allowing people to keep their own money, which will ensure that the economy grows.